Good morning and welcome to the monthly Alabama Works webinar series. And here is your host, Tim McCartney, Chair of the Alabama Workforce Council.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for the May 2022 Alabama Workforce Council monthly webinar. This morning, we're delighted to have several terrific speakers, and we're going to start off with Secretary of Labor Fitzgerald Washington. He's going to kick us off this morning and provide us an update on the Alabama Department of Labor's Workforce Development Program. Following Secretary Washington, we'll have Mr. Mike Oatridge. Mike recently retired from the Honda Corporation after serving a long and distinguished career, and he also rolled off the Alabama Workforce Council, where he did a great job. Mike's going to join us this morning to discuss a new initiative that he is leading for the World Games, which will be held in Birmingham this summer. Mike's initiative is called ALEX, which stands for the Alabama Experience. Following Mike, we will be having our guest, Ms. Hannah Putnam, of the National Council on Teacher Quality. Hannah is going to offer her perspective on the connection between teacher licensure and student achievement. Her topic is very timely since our State Board of Education is currently considering loosening educator licensure requirements. So we look forward to hearing from Hannah. We're also going to highlight the beautiful Rainbow Cafe that's in my hometown of Gadsden, Alabama, and is part of the Gadsden City School System. The beautiful Rainbow Cafe is under the leadership of Mr. Chip Rowan, and the cafe was recently recognized by Governor Ivey as one of the 4 winners of the inaugural Work-Based Learning Seal of Excellence. So we look forward to hearing from Chip. After Chip, we'll have our monthly update from Nick Moore of the Governor's Office of Education and Workforce Transformation. So now I'll turn the floor over to Secretary of Labor, Mr. Fitzgerald Washington. Fitz, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'm really excited about the conversation that we'll have today as far as what we do at the Alabama Department of Labor. The Alabama state has really been experiencing some really positive headwinds with its current economy. So today's discussion will focus on some key employment metrics that indicate that our economy really is moving in the right direction, especially coming out what we call a very troublesome time with the pandemic. And so I'm going to share my screen and focus on just a couple slides here. Can everybody see my screen?
No, sir.
All right.
I cannot see it, Fitz.
You cannot see it?
No, sir. Hold on a second.
Well, how about now?
There we go. That's working.
Wonderful. So as I mentioned, there's been a lot of positive headwinds with our economy since the pandemic. And so I'm going to focus on some key workforce metric scorecards. Now, these metrics are what I look at on a monthly basis to give me an idea, the state an idea, how our economy is forming. So the first key metric is our civilian labor force. Our civilian labor force right now is at 2.2 million. That's an increase over the month of February, which again is a really strong sign that again, more folks are actually getting into the workforce. The second bullet point is employment. Our employment is 2.2 million. This is our job count number. Again, we showed an increase over the month, which means more people actually moved into our workforce over the month for the first time in some period of time. Unemployment. Our unemployment number, which we report the number of people that are unemployed, is at 65,485. This number indicates the lowest number in state's history. There's never been a time in our state history where we've had fewer people that we reported as unemployed. Because of that number, it sort of resulted in our unemployment rate, which is at 2.9%. There was a 0.1% drop from the previous month, which again shows there are more people actually moving into our workforce. The next key metric, and I know a lot of conversation has been had over the past couple of years about our labor force participation rate. Alabama's labor force participation rate finished in March at 56.8%. Very important point to note that over the last 2 months, our labor force participation rate has increased 0.4 of a percentage point. And again, another good sign that more people who have been discounted from our workforce are actually getting back into the workforce. And so we're all really excited about our labor force participation percentage.
Stop. This meeting is being recorded.
Now, in comparison, the U.S. unemployment rate is at 3.6%. So Alabama is actually performing a whole lot better as it relates to our unemployment rate than the entire nation. And as comparison with our labor force participation rate, which I mentioned that's at 56.8%, the U.S. labor force participation rate is at 62.4%. I'm really excited about the momentum with our labor force participation rate, again, increasing 0.4 of a percentage point. Our focus here at the Department of Labor is to make sure those who have been disconnected from our workforce, we want to make sure we raise the awareness that there are a lot of available jobs out there, a lot of high-skilled jobs out there, so that we can move these folks into the workforce. Now, there are a lot of reasons why some folks still aren't moving back into the workforce, and it's not a one silver bullet answer, but it's a multitude of different reasons. But I am, in the governor's office, is very encouraged to see more folks moving back into the workforce. Now, these key workforce metrics are very important. As you look at the bullet points that I've got listed here on the screen, for 2 months in a row, 2 consecutive months in a row, that all these key metrics have shown positive results. And that's something that everybody should be excited about. I also want to mention too that as it relates to our unemployment rate, for 17 consecutive months in a row, Alabama's unemployment rate actually has been lower than any of our southeastern states. And so again, there's some secret sauce that's going on right here in the state of Alabama that we are performing a lot better than our neighboring southeastern states. A lot of credit has to go to the Department of Commerce and the administration, but in particular, the Department of Commerce, because there's not a week that doesn't go by where there's an announcement that a new company is coming into the state of Alabama, whether it be 100 jobs, 200 jobs, 300 jobs, or 600 jobs. Those are really exciting announcements. And so what that tells me, what tells our administration that, wow, Alabama has the workforce that can satisfy a lot of these jobs that are coming into the state. And so for that, we all should be excited. And I would also be remiss if I didn't say this. There are a lot of existing companies that are expanding, which also is creating a really good situation for our real positive economy for the state of Alabama. And so again, this slide represents the key metrics that we look at, I look at on a monthly basis. And it's very rare that you have all these key metrics show positive results. Our state hasn't had this kind of performance, this kind of success since pre-pandemic. And so again, kudos for everybody in our workforce system to be working collaboratively to move our economy forward. The next slide kind of speaks to job change. I've been a participant in a lot of workforce groups, and we talk about where are the people, where are the jobs. So this slide kind of speaks to February 2020 to March 2022, and it relates to the job change. So you can see job change in the trade, transportation, utility sector. It increased over 17,000 folks. Construction, 4,800. Professional and business services, 2,800. But what's interesting, if you look towards the bottom, leisure and hospitality. As you know, you've heard me talk about the leisure and hospitality sector probably was the sector that probably was hit the hardest during the pandemic, because those are tough jobs that require one-on-one engagement with the general public. And a lot of those folks who were in the leisure and hospitality sector actually got retrained and went to one of our career centers, got retrained and moved out, and now they're in different sectors in our workforce. But you can see the drastic change in leisure and hospitality, and then followed up by education and health services. And so this is something that we've been talking about for a long period of time about where are the people and what are they doing? This graphic here kind of points to that some of these folks have moved out of a sector and perhaps into another sector and they're not coming back. And so I thought this graphic was very, very telling in terms of job change over that period of time since the pandemic.
Mr. Secretary, let me interrupt a second. We lost your screen share for some reason.
Can you see it now?
I can't.
You can?
I cannot.
Not sure what happened.
Well, I don't know what happened either. But I didn't.
Well, anyway, that was my last slide, but it talked about job change since the pandemic. And a lot of folks, like in particular, leisure hospitality, those folks moved out of that sector and they moved into other sectors. And so again, those folks aren't coming back. And so a lot of folks are wondering, especially from an employer perspective, why is it so difficult for us to find workers? Well, that slide kind of speaks to it. So what I could do is I'll make sure I make those slides available to the group. So I apologize if there were some technical difficulties with you viewing the last slide. But again, the point I want to make is Alabama is in a really good place right now with how our economy is moving forward. And so I attribute that to this group, the governor's office, in terms of us all singing off the same hymnal, doing the right things to move our economy forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary, for your time and information this morning. We appreciate your leadership throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. I know you were one of the busiest people in the state. You were overwhelmed, your office was, and we appreciate all the good work that you and your team have provided through this time. We look forward to working with you to continuing toward increasing our labor force participation rate where we close the gap between us and the national average. So thanks again for all the work. Call on us anytime. I know you will.
Okay.
Our next,
we are gaining ground. We are gaining ground with that labor force participation rate.
Yes, sir. That 0.4% looks good. Keep going.
Yeah, 0.4 of a percentage point.
Yeah. All right. Now we're going to have Mr. Micah Oakridge to present on the World Games and the Alabama experience. Mike, the floor is yours.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. And I see your screen.
First of all, thanks for having me today. As you know, I was on AWC for several years. I retired in January, as Tim said, and I'm actually working with EDPA on this initiative, which is the Alabama Experience. The idea of the Alabama Experience is grown out of the work I did when I was at Honda. We used the Honda Indy as a recruiting event, and we thought we could use the same type of approach at the World Games. Of course, we're going to have over 500,000 spectators coming from out of state, huge economic impact, and it'll run from July 7th through the 17th. We'll also have over 100 countries coming in, probably the first time that they've ever been to the state. The idea is very simple. You know, when I started at Honda 25 years ago in the state, we put up a help wanted sign. We needed 1,200 people, and we probably got 60,000 applications. That was normal back then. Now you put up a help wanted sign and you get very few applications because, as Fitzgerald just mentioned, there's a very high participation in the labor market already. So people are not only looking for opportunity, they're looking for what education they can get and what quality of life they'll have, and finally what their lifestyle is going to look like. And good news is Alabama offers all these things. So we're going to try and target people to understand what it would be like to have a life in Alabama, not so much what it's like to have a job in Alabama. And there's three main goals: retaining talent. Of course, we have a fairly high rate of Alabama graduate students leaving the state after they graduate. We want to persuade people into technical skill jobs, and then of course convince people from out of state or out of the country to really think about Alabama as a place to work and live and grow their family. So we'll be set up at the entrance to the World Game Plaza. This is the free area within the World Games. We have a very large presence. It's 115 by 120 foot tent, about the size of a third of a football field. And we have a very strong marketing campaign, which you'll see kick off shortly. Basically, playing off the word Alex, kind of like Where's Waldo? Have you met Alex? Have you seen Alex? Those kind of things. The idea is that we are targeting 3 main sectors, that is advanced manufacturing, health services, and information technology. We picked these because this is where we heard the loudest voice about people having struggles trying to hire people in the state. And as you move through the event space, you'll go and you'll understand that there are opportunities, what education is available, what your quality of life would look like, but ultimately what the life would likely be if you took this job in the state. And we'll do this through interactive displays, very high quality videos. There'll be several videos. This video will show testimonials from people from out the state, from, a lifeguard down at Orange Beach to a bartender at, Good People Brewery to somebody at the Balloon Festival or the Peanut Festival. And then this video is very much like the movie that you see at Soarin' in Disney, where somebody moves to Alabama, experiences everything it has to offer, and decides to stay. So inside of the space, you'll travel through the event space kind of in this shape and come out over here. As you come in, there'll be a robot playing korfball. On the other side, we're going to have a motion capture suit, which I'll explain in a minute. But also there'll be interactive kiosks, which are very entertaining and very educational for people to understand what's going on. And as they're leaving the event space, every of the 7 regions that will be staffed by economic development people, chamber people, workforce people, will be there to greet them and answer questions about what it's like to live in the state. We're expecting to have at least 50,000 people come through the event space over the 11 days. But as you can see, we're expecting to impact more than double of that based off of the web phase version of this. So how does this work? The very first thing that happens is you're given a nice souvenir when you walk in the door. It is a nice lanyard that you can wear around your neck. Feels like you're, a VIP at the World Games. And to get that name tag, we're going to ask for your name and your phone number and your cell phone, and we're going to guess your age. More than likely, if it's somebody like me going through, my name's going to be Bob, and my phone number is going to be 1234567. It's okay. We're now creating a file with your name on it because inside that tag is an RFID tag. And as you travel through this space, we're going to track everything you look at, everything you don't look at. So as you move through this space, you'll go through a career opportunity section, education opportunity section, and a lifestyle section. So the very first thing you're going to do is see this cool motion capture suits. So we're going to have people wearing these suits, no cameras required. They automatically translate into this image here. And when they transfer that image, right now we're working on this will be a cardiovascular system with a skeleton system on top of it. On the other side, AIDT is working on this, and it's almost complete. A korfball robotic is an industrial arm, and we'll have people challenge this robot to a game of korfball. Along this back wall is a 48-foot by 9-foot immersive video that will highlight healthcare jobs, advanced manufacturing jobs, and IT jobs in the state. The idea is while people are playing with this, they're looking at these kiosks and looking at this and saying, hey, robots are kind of cool. And I didn't know we use this many robots to build airplanes, cars, and such in the state. Same with the IT side, same with the healthcare side. While they're looking at that, they'll be asked 3 questions on the kiosks. Did you think the advanced manufacturing robots were cool, the information technology was cool, or healthcare was cool? In this scenario, I picked advanced manufacturing. And then they say, did you know we build automotive products, aerospace, and chemical products utilizing robots? And then they, in this case, picked automotive. Did you know that we have production jobs, technician jobs, and engineering jobs? And if they click on one of these, immediately all the jobs in the state show up and how many openings there are currently in the state in those jobs, along with the average salary. Then they can dive down and look at, for example, Birmingham only or whatever. And it'll also scroll across all of the major companies that are hiring in the state at the time. They'll be prompted from this to go on and talk about what kind of education they need. And when they get to the education booth, it's going to remember who you are. It's going to say, hey, Bob, welcome back. Hey, you picked a job that pays $51,000 a year, but it only requires a high school education. But did you know that you can go to school for 2 years and get $12,000 more? And did you know, for example, in this case, Mercedes-Benz will pay for you to go to school? And here's a link on how to do that. It'll then also scroll across the bottom all of the major universities and colleges that offer that training program. So the final screens that are set up in 3 different formats. The first format is 12 years and under. There's another one between 12 and 25 and 25 and older. This is the 12 and under screen where they are comparing the city. So they pick the production job in Birmingham. They know they make $51,000 a year. And they're going to compare and say, but I really want to move to Atlanta or Houston or Charlotte. So if they pick Atlanta in this category, they're going to say in Birmingham, you'll make $51,000 a year. To have the exact same quality of life, you'd have to make $11,000 more to live in Atlanta. That's enough to buy 2 Nintendo Switches every month for the rest of your life. So monetizing it towards the group of people and their age group. And if they click on any of these below, you can understand why the cost of living is higher in Atlanta, whether it's housing, transportation, groceries, entertainment. We'll also go through some features, events, and then finally, the sponsors will have the opportunity to put their logos up here and say, hey, Honda's hiring, Mercedes-Benz is hiring. Are you interested in us sending your information to them? At which point you'll pick up your cell phone and you'll scan that 2D barcode and it'll say, hey, Bob, phone number 1234. Do you want to change any of this information before we send this information to these employers? Of course, at this point, they will. And we'll ask them to go through a full registration and get their real information, which allows us to do personalized follow-up with them, but also create a very good database. As they're leaving this area, after they've seen the video and they've gone through all this, each of the 7 workforce regions will be represented on the flanking sides of the tent, where we'll have a friendly, happy face. One of the reasons that I stayed in Alabama is the people, and really showcasing the people in the state and answering questions and giving them a friendly advice about what it's like to live in the state. When you go home, you can take this nice badge with you, and on the back of the badge is another QR code. And if you're sitting on your back porch saying, hey, I went to this cool thing called Alex, you can go through the exact same experience on your cell phone or on a PC at home. So that's why we believe we're going to reach out even to more people. So we are really working on trying to improve the opportunities for people to understand what it's like to live in the state. We will have some immediate pairing, but we end up with a complete workforce data set that we've never had before, to our knowledge. We're also ended up with an Alex event system. So we plan on replicating this event at different scales at 6 more times throughout the year following the World Games. And when we're putting this together, we're very cognizant of cost. So 65% of all the assets will be reusable, making this a fairly cost-effective way to reach out to people. So the good news is, as I just said, we believe that Alex will assist in building that healthy economy by recruiting and training skilled associates and giving them a one-stop shopping. We're also going to be collecting a lot of data, and this could innovate the ways that we reach out or retrain and how we recruit talented workforce. As I already said, we're going to use this throughout the state in the years following the game. And we really want Alex to be an ongoing resource to aid the state in economic development and efforts both in the private and the public sector. And really, I can't thank you enough. I think many of you have seen this presentation probably way too many times already, but really want to thank for the ongoing support of Alex. And right now we are fully funded, and we're actually a little bit ahead of schedule as we head into the World Games, which are about 50 days away. And that's all I got. Thank you very much.
All right, Mike, we really appreciate that. That's an exciting update. And we look forward to working with you on integrating the data that you've developed through Alex into our workforce development efforts. Look forward to having an exciting World Game. I know you put a lot of time and effort in this. We appreciate that. They picked the right guy to do it, right guy to lead it.
Thanks,
so thank you so much. Now we'll have Ms. Hannah Putman of the National Council on Teacher Quality to talk to us about teacher licensure. Hannah, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. As Tim said, my name is Hannah Putman. I'm from the National Council on Teacher Quality. And CTQ is a research and policy-driven nonprofit based on the mission that every child deserves access to effective teachers and every teacher deserves the opportunity to become effective. Going to go ahead and share my screen. And I understand that, can everyone see my slide deck? Great. All right. I understand that licensure tests have been a contentious topic of late in Alabama. So I am pleased to be here today to share some of the work that NCTQ has done over the last 3 years, gathering data on licensure tests pass rates across the country, including in Alabama. In a previous presentation to this group, I shared some of the broad findings about pass rates on these tests in Alabama. And today I'd like to revisit some of those findings and really dig into the research on why these licensure tests matter. For reference, Alabama currently requires teacher candidates to pass a content test that assesses whether they know the content that they'll be licensed to teach. So basically, do teachers know the content that they'll be teaching their students, as well as a performance assessment that measures whether they know how to teach. And for elementary teachers, a test of whether they know how to teach reading, arguably the most important skill for young children to master. Alabama is in good company. 43 states require that elementary teachers pass some test of content knowledge, and 51 states require a content test for secondary teachers. So why do we need licensure tests at all? Just to confirm, can everyone see that my slides advanced? Okay, great, thank you. Why do we need licensure tests at all? Why do these matter? Based on surveys of the field agrees that licensure tests assess an important job requirement. Surveys that NCTQ has done, as well as others in the field, show that teacher prep program leaders, K-12 teachers, and state education agency leaders agree teachers can't teach what they don't know, and they should demonstrate that knowledge before they begin teaching. So why a test? Why can't we just assume that since people went through teacher preparation programs, they know the content? Unfortunately, a college degree and completing teacher prep actually does not guarantee that aspiring teachers have learned this content. A few years ago in 2019, NCTQ analyzed the course requirements of 800 undergraduate elementary programs and several hundred graduate programs. We looked at the requirements of the programs themselves, as well as general education course requirements from the university, and found that often teachers aren't learning the content that they will be teaching. For the elementary grades, we found that nearly a quarter of teacher prep programs didn't require any elementary math coursework, and more than 1 in 10 programs didn't require any US history coursework. We also found some big deficiencies in science. So licensure tests act as a guardrail after somebody has completed teacher preparation, ensuring that whether they learn the content in high school or in college or through preparation, they know the content before they go into the classroom. Of course, content knowledge isn't the only thing teachers need. They also need to know how to teach a lesson, how to build relationships with students and their families, but knowing the content you're teaching is necessary. And licensure tests aren't the only way to measure that knowledge, but they offer some pretty big advantages over the alternatives. They are scalable, efficient, they can be compared across candidates from every institution in the state. They are designed to be reliable, and they're designed to assess a broad range of knowledge rather than focusing on a single lesson or objective. And where the research has been done, it's generally found that licensure tests are predictive of effectiveness in the classroom. So I want to dig in more on this last point. We did a literature review looking for any research on the question of predictive validity of licensure tests from the last 2 decades. We found about 15 studies looking at this question, and nearly every one of them found a modest, statistically significant relationship between licensure tests and teacher effectiveness. In other words, people who either do better on these exams or pass the first time they take them are more effective once they go into the classroom. And keep in mind, in many states, the people who never pass these tests never end up becoming a teacher of record. And so these studies are probably underestimating how big this effect is. So to dig in on a few specific examples out of these 15, a study back in 2011 found that teachers who failed Florida's licensure test at least once tended to have significantly lower student test scores. And these negative correlations actually outweighed the gains associated with having a national board certification or attending a more selective college. So the predictiveness of these licensure tests was actually a bigger predictor than some of the other measures that we typically see to measure to predict teacher effectiveness. In 2007, a study in North Carolina found that teachers who scored in the top quintile, so the top 20% of licensure tests, achieved about 2.2 to 3.5% of a standard deviation more in student reading and math achievement, which may not sound like much, but it really adds up over time. So these are just a few of the 15 studies that have been done that found this positive correlation. Most recently, a study in Massachusetts found that licensure tests were predictive of teacher outcomes, both based on value-added scores, which are just test-based outcomes, as well as their evaluation ratings, which look at teacher observations, look at how well they're teaching. Also, it found that these tests were predictive not only for white teachers, but also even more strongly predictive for teachers of color. So it was not finding evidence that these tests were missing out on some additional quality that teachers of color bring, but that these tests are predictive for a diverse set of teachers. And admittedly, not all of the studies were positive. One of them found no statistically significant relationship between first-time pass rates and teacher effectiveness, although in this study, only 8% of the sample failed on their first attempt. So there were very few teachers in that sample who didn't pass. And then another study looking at California found no relationship with most licensure tests in that state, and one negative association between teacher scores on a content test and students' reading achievement. But again, this study only included teachers who ultimately passed their tests. So overwhelmingly, the research agrees that these tests do predict teacher effectiveness. So how much does that matter? When we're talking about teacher effectiveness, does having a teacher who is a little bit better in the classroom really make a difference? A study from a few years ago found that for a child, having a highly effective teacher, one in the top quintile of performance, just a few years in a row could put them 50 percentile points above their peer who had an ineffective teacher each of those years. So the difference between having a more or a less effective teacher adds up a lot and makes a huge difference for students. In fact, a 2005 study by Eric Hanyashek estimated that a child in poverty who has an effective teacher 5 years in a row would have learning gains large enough on average to close completely the income gap between them and higher income students. So making sure that children have access to effective teachers is incredibly important, especially for closing achievement gaps. And also, a teacher's effectiveness is especially important in the elementary grades. A paper hot off the presses from Dan Goldhaber and colleagues at the Calder Institute found that when they were looking at children's 8th grade outcomes, the effectiveness of their 4th grade teacher mattered nearly half as much as their 8th grade teacher. So that's astounding to think that the quality of a teacher you had 4 years ago matters almost half as much as the teacher that you have now. So making sure that students in the early grades have effective teachers is tremendously important. And while teachers do get better over time, those who start out as ineffective tend to stay less effective. This was demonstrated in a 2015 study by Atbury, Loeb, and Wyckoff. So while licensure tests are not a perfect predictor of teacher effectiveness, they are a pretty strong one. And it is really important to figure out as soon as possible who is more likely to be effective and who isn't, especially because children who are furthest from opportunity are most likely to have ineffective teachers. Looking at multiple measures of student measures of opportunity, whether it's looking at student race, students who qualify for free and reduced price lunch, they are more likely to have teachers who have less experience, lower value-added scores, lower qualifications. And so making sure that those students don't have even more ineffective teachers is critically important. So what does this mean for Alabama? What's happening in the Alabama data? This is a snapshot of pass rates by institution on the elementary content licensure test. So this is Alabama's test that assesses whether elementary teachers know the English language arts, math, science, and social studies content that they're expected to be able to teach. This is 3 years of data from before the pandemic, and each of these bars represents a different institution or university in the state. By and large, almost everybody in Alabama is passing the licensure test. The state average for best attempt pass rates, or pass rates after people can retake the test, is 85%. So very few people are actually failing this test. But you can see there's a tremendous variation by institution. There's quite a few institutions where 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 people are passing, But there's a few institutions where more than half of test takers are failing. So if people are concerned about low pass rates in the state, it may be better to focus on these institutions where people are predominantly struggling rather than to drop the test entirely. So what are alternatives to dropping the licensure test? The state board certainly has some valid concerns about making sure every classroom has a teacher and making sure that the workforce is not is as diverse as possible. But licensure tests are not the big barrier to many of those problems. If the state is finding that too many people fail on their first attempt, a better solution would be to help teachers learn the content that they're struggling with. So use diagnostic testing to identify those weaknesses, require more aligned coursework through their preparation program, make sure teachers learn the content that they don't know. If testing fees are posing a barrier, explore options to cover the cost of these retake fees. New Jersey just passed legislation saying that the prep program can incorporate test fees into their student fees, which could allow students to pay for it with financial aid. Some places are exploring options to have the preparation programs themselves cover the cost of retakes. So there are solutions available to address testing fees. If teacher diversity is a concern, because we do know that aspiring teachers of color earn disproportionately low pass rates on these exams. Identify and replicate promising practices from institutions like Auburn University, where the pass rates for test takers of color actually exceed the state average for all test takers in Alabama. So find out what these strong institutions are doing right and replicate those practices. If many candidates are failing the test by only 1 or 2 points, which is one of the arguments made during the state board meeting on this issue, consider lowering the cut score slightly, because that is, while not desirable, certainly better than dropping this guardrail entirely. And finally, one of the main arguments I heard is that rural teachers are having trouble attracting teachers. If rural schools are having trouble, the answer is not to drop licensure tests. In fact, there's been a set of studies in Washington state that found that for the last 10 years or so, they've had a surplus of teachers. Many teachers who are trained to become a teacher don't get a teaching job, actually make less money in the field that they go into instead of teaching. But at the same time, rural schools in the state are having persistent teacher shortages. So even when there is a surplus of teachers in the state of Washington, rural schools were still having trouble attracting teachers. Simply flooding the market with more teachers is not going to solve rural school shortages. So instead, solutions need to be focused on drawing teachers to rural regions, whether it's focusing on recruitment through student teaching, financial incentives, making working in a rural region more attractive. The answer is not simply to do away with this guardrail for teaching. So thank you for joining me today. My email is here, as well as the link to the Alabama State Pass Rates dashboard, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions that anybody has. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Hannah. The data that you presented here makes it clear that we must not allow the interests of a few people who have traditionally been against education or educator licensure for years. They don't need to be able to use the pandemic and teacher shortage as an excuse for achieving their policy preferences. So very important information. I read on your website the other day, I think this same report is on there. Is it correct?
That's right.
Okay. So you might want to mention that where people would find that report, because it's very, very important information.
Absolutely. All of this data in our report is available at nctq.org under our section on licensure test pass rates.
Well, thank you again. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of the week. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Next, we'll have Mr. Chip Rowan from the beautiful Rainbow Cafe in Gadsden. Chip, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for inviting us. I'm really excited to talk to you today about an innovative program here in Gadsden, Alabama, part of the Gadsden City Schools, that is addressing workforce participation by people with significant disabilities. So I'm going to try to share my screen. I'm terrible at this kind of stuff, so y'all bear with me. And I have a few little slides I'd like to share with you. Okay, now here. Okay. All right, so Beautiful Rainbow Cafe is a program of the Gadsden City Schools. And what it is it's a cafe that's open to the public and that is completely staffed by people with special needs. And in fact, it's the only such program in the world, believe it or not, where people with significant cognitive disorders and autism spectrum disorder who are students run a full service cafe. So before I get into talking a lot more about that, I just wanted to show you really a real brief video that we have. Here we go. That tells you more about what's going on at Beautiful Rainbow. Beautiful Rainbow is a training program for adolescents and young adults with significant cognitive disabilities or autism spectrum disorder, where we use the operation of a restaurant that's open to the public and a garden where we grow our own food as vehicles to teach those students the skills they'll need to get community-based employment.
I learned how to make a French press coffee using a scale to measure the beans and then use a grinder to grind the beans and set a timer for the coffee to brew.
Whether those be real technical skills or whether they're the more soft skills like how to get along with others, how to follow directions, and all of those things that make you successful in the workplace.
In my position, I've had a unique opportunity to see this program be one of the most effective workforce development tools ever in our community. Our students have gone from incapable to completely capable. They can have conversations with adults and other students. They're able to serve. They've become part of our workforce. We've seen them go into community-based employment. It's an incredible program.
So our ultimate goal is to make sure that our students are equipped to succeed in private competitive employment. And we've been very successful in that regard. In just the last 2 years, we've placed 25 of our students with local employers. And to help develop those skills beyond just food service, we've started a new initiative of developing training videos that teach students a wide variety of workplace skills.
What I like to do is make our carrot cake, and I put the frosting on it, and I smooth it out until it's all nice and pretty. And who knows, I might even get a little taste.
So what's exciting and progressive about our training program is it's happening right here in front of you, right here in the public eye. The students get to interact with customers, with vendors, and they're learning all of those social interaction skills that they're going to need to be successful in private employment.
It's beautiful to see how our students have grown right along with this program. They've become local celebrities through social media. We love watching them. They've changed us just as much as we've changed them.
So as I was saying a minute ago, one of the main reasons why we started Beautiful Rainbow Cafe is to increase the workforce participation of people with significant cognitive disabilities. When you look at the statistics that Secretary Washington was talking about Alabama's workforce participation rate, surely one of the areas that we need to be looking at is this population and what is their rate of participation in the workforce. Because when you look at statistics, you'll see that among the most significantly cognitively impaired people in the United States and people on the autism spectrum, of those people, over 90% of them are not participating in workforce. And so that's just a challenge that we have to do better with. And when we looked at our own system here in Gadsden a few years ago, we looked at a cohort of 80 students and found that of those 80 students with significant disabilities who had left our program, that not a single one of them was employed, nor were they involved in any kind of vocational training program that would lead to community-based employment. So given those dismal results, we felt like a work-based learning approach, like the ones we use at Beautiful Rainbow, would be needed to sort of improve these kinds of outcomes. Now you heard in the, I'm sorry, we got to move on from that one. You heard in the video that we had placed 25 students in community-based employment. But that video is a little bit old. And so now you see in this slide that actually now we're up to 35 of our students who have gone through training at Beautiful Rainbow who now are working in private employment. And so a minute ago, I just told you, when we looked at a cohort before, there were zero employed from this group of individuals. And now through the program they get at Beautiful Rainbow, we have 35 of them. So that's a huge improvement. And I think there are a couple of major reasons why we've been successful. I think that the most important factor is the expectations that we have for our students. You know, this is a group of people who have often been told that they are not able, that they can't do. And people are always saying, oh, let me do this for you. Let me help you, and so forth. And so when we have these kinds of expectations for people that they cannot perform, that they cannot do what other folks do, then that's the result we're going to get. We're going to get people who do not perform and who do not work, because, you know, if you've been told for years and years that you're not able, then you learn that kind of view of yourself. Well, we challenge those expectations to the core at Beautiful Rainbow. We expect the students to perform. We expect them to make that carrot cake you saw. We expect them to go out and serve those people from the community who come in to eat. We expect them to operate a point of sale system, and we expect them to do all of this in a courteous, professional manner. And because of those expectations, the students really respond, and they gain a lot of confidence in themselves. Of course, they gain skills through learning that make them employable. And that leads me to the second, I think, factor that's so important, and that is our work in the community. Because we have an open kitchen and because we're open to the public, then individuals from the public come in and watch the students perform. I mean, they will see that the students themselves are carrying out these tasks, that it's not, oh, an instructor in the background really doing it and you know, passing it off as student work, but it's actually the students themselves who are performing. You can see it. And when potential employers come in and see that the students are operating a cafe and doing it safely and cleanly and producing high quality food, well, then that shows them that these are people worth employing. And I think that's why we've been so successful. So this slide that I'm moving on to next shows you just some of the many partnerships that we've developed in Gadsden with employers who have taken on our students. And of course, this is an ongoing thing, and this is what our mission is all about. So making these kinds of relationships and connections throughout the city has benefited not just our students by getting employed, but it has benefited these employers. And so we're really, really excited that we have been able to accomplish that. We mentioned in the video that in order to share our best practices and expertise with others, we have developed a website that hosts a lot of instructional videos teaching students about the soft skills they'll need in employment, or about how to dress right for employment, how to have a good job interview, how to resolve conflict, and all of those things. And we're now sharing all of those instructional videos, which also have detailed lesson plans, with teachers all over Alabama. And we've had teachers all over Alabama sign up on the website, which is at beautifulrainbowtraining.com, and using all of those instructional resources free. So I'm going to figure out how to get out of my screen share and see if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask.
Chip, we really don't have a way for the public to ask questions, but I would encourage anyone that has a question for Chip about the Beautiful Rainbow to send it to AlabamaWorks.com, and we will get you an answer. Chip, you might want to mention, are the videos, instruction videos available for the public at large?
Yes, all you have to do is go to the website I mentioned, which is beautifulrainbowtraining.com and create a login, and anybody can view those and use those.
Well, that's great. That's very helpful. Well, thank you for sharing all this with us today on Beautiful Rainbow Cafe. We appreciate all you're doing for our students, and you serve as an inspiration to the other regions across Alabama, and that will challenge them to rise to your team's level of excellence. And congratulations on the award from Governor Ivey.
Well, thank you so much. And listen, I just want one last thing. Y'all come eat. I mean, we're open Tuesday through Friday for lunch, and we're located downtown Gadsden in the public library, and we'll take good care of you. Come eat with us.
And I can attest to that. I've been to Beautiful Rainbow. It's great food, and it's a terrific experience, and y'all do a wonderful job. Thank you so much for being with us today, Chip.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Getting toward the close. We'll do our normal closeout with Mr. Nick Moore of the Governor's Office of Education and Workforce Transformation. He will close out today's program with our monthly workforce and labor market update. Nick?
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I normally provide some labor market statistics, but Secretary Washington covered that well for us today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that we are working on very closely with the Alabama Workforce Council on, and that's competency-based education, skills-based hiring. And so I want to say that competency-based education, skills-based hiring is kind of a daunting sounding couple of terms, but it's real simple when you kind of break it down. Traditionally and currently, we're using the sort of industrial model of education that's based on seat time and credit hours. And so if you look at my college or high school transcript or your transcript, it's going to tell you what courses you took and not necessarily what skills you mastered. And so what we want to do is work with each of you and all of our education and training providers to get to a system to where we are looking at the skills people have mastered. Now, I want to say at the very outset that this is not a challenge or some contest or competition between traditional education or higher education, not at all. This is a way for connecting what has been a disparate system of non-credit programs, short-term programs, non-degree credentials, and our traditional system. So this is a way to make sure that all learning counts, and whether you go into your career pathway through lived experience or through the military or through a 2-year program or through a 4-year program, that the entry point is not what determines the outcome. It's that you get to own all of your learning. And for employers, this system, as I get into skills-based hiring, has the potential of really helping to reduce the amount of churn that happens. And then also some of the degree inflation that happens when employers put degrees in job descriptions, even though maybe the incumbent workforce doesn't have those. Again, that's not anything, a challenge to higher education. And I think we all agree that degrees matter, but making sure that we put degrees in job descriptions where they belong so that the requisite wage premium is attached to that is important. So a competency-based model is based on the information age and our changing nature of work. And a lot of this is accelerated during COVID-19 to where employers are rethinking requirements for jobs. So we see a lot of major employers like IBM, for example, nationally, that are rethinking the number of job descriptions that require degrees, and they're going more towards skills. So competency-based education, and I will tell you, competency-based education and skills-based hiring have to go hand in hand, but this first level is about making sure that, as I said, we're translating clock hours and time into skills. And this can be done through prior learning assessment. That just means if I come in and present certain skills, that I can show you through assessment that I've mastered those and that you get credit for it. And then what is skills-based hiring? It's just an approach to talent management that starts with identifying skills in job descriptions and making sure that the HR and hiring process is based on matching talent opportunity. So what are some of the benefits? It's allowing employers to align the HR and hiring process more to find the exact candidates that they want without so many different substitutes in between. And the benefit to employers is saving time and money. And the benefit to the workers at large is it's just a more transparent process into finding an in-demand job. It takes a lot of the word of mouth out of it and trial and error. And so what we're building in Alabama is the nation's first full-scale talent marketplace that takes together the three elements of a competency-based and skills-based hiring system. And that's a learning and employment record that allows somebody to own all their learning experience and basically a digital wallet to showcase all the skills they've mastered over whatever period of time they want to display. And then quality, transparent credentials, all the thousands of credentials that are out there registered on our Alabama credential registry, so they're transparent. And then skills-based job descriptions so that employers can base job descriptions, as I said, on specific skills that make up those jobs that they're looking to fill, and then connecting those to people's learning and employment records. So what that looks like in our talent triad system is we've got a connection between students and job seekers, employers, education, training providers. And where the magic happens is the connections between those are learning and employment record, credential registry, and skills-based job descriptions, putting this talent system into place for Alabama. So anybody in the state of Alabama will be able to showcase all the skills that they've mastered. An employer will be able to use skills to make job descriptions that connect directly with people that have mastered those skills. And education training providers will have the benefit of using these data to align their education training programs to have more customized programs and meet the needs of employers and the students and job seekers that are looking for these short-term and skills-based programs that then articulate to a longer-term program. So we're excited about the potential and look forward to demonstrating the solution with you next month.
All right, thanks, Nick, for that update. I know you know how excited I've been about getting all this out in the public and our program finished, and we've got to get the industry side now up to speed so we can use these new tools. And I think it's going to really make an impact on Alabama and help our people here get connected to good jobs and connect those skills with employers that are looking for the people with the skills. So thank you again for your update. I also want to thank all of our speakers that joined us today for all the valuable information they shared with us and updating us on many of the exciting programs going on in Alabama. Looking forward to the World Games coming up in July. Mike, you're doing a great job. I also appreciate everyone joining us the call today and watching us live, but just want to remind you that this program can be found anytime at the AlabamaWorks.com website. So all of our previous programs are there for your perusal, and please share them with people that you know that need this information. So that will do all of the Workforce Council's work for today. And I invite you to join us next month on June 20th at 9 a.m. for the next Alabama Workforce Council webinar. Until then, stay safe. Have a great week.